Have you ever stopped to consider um, the hidden layers in conflicts? The unseen hands maybe shaping events we think we understand?
Yeah, or like, what if the stories we hear are just scratching the surface?
Exactly. What if there's a much more complex reality underneath? Let's dive into something today that might just make you rethink a small corner of history.
And what's interesting here is how a relatively obscure name, can unlock this really intricate and frankly debated series of events.
Totally. Makes you wonder what else is out there.
Hmm.
We're talking about the Front for the Liberation of Lebanon from Foreigners, the FLLF.
Right. Or in Arabic, Jabhat Tahrir Lubnan min al-Ghuraba.
And French too, Front pour la Libération du Liban des Étrangers.
Quite a mouthful.
Yeah. By all accounts, this was, well, a shadowy underground group, appeared in Lebanon early 1980s.
And the basis for our deep dive today is, maybe surprisingly, a single Wikipedia page about them.
Which is kind of wild, right? One source has so much detail on what seems like a minor historical footnote.
It really shows how even these smaller players can have these complicated, controversial backgrounds. Worth looking closer.
So our goal today is to try and unravel the alleged story of the FLLF for you, understand where it supposedly came from, what it's linked to, and all the accusations around it.
Think of it as a concise way to get a handle on a pretty contested piece of Lebanese history.
Okay, so a group operating in the shadows. Where do we even start?
Well, the logical place is their alleged origins. Our source points to a claim by the journalist Ronan Birdman.
Okay.
He claimed the FLLF was, and this is a quote, a terrorist organization that Israel ran in Lebanon in the years 1980-83.
Wow. Okay. That's a very direct claim. So the allegation is Israel wasn't just involved in the conflict, but actively created and directed a terror group.
That's the assertion in the source, yeah. It says this was allegedly ordered by Raphael Yitan. He was the IDF chief of staff then. And he reportedly told General Avigdor Ben-Gal and Mir Dagan, big names in Israeli military circles, to set up and run the FLLF. This was apparently after the 1979 Nahariya attack in Israel.
Ah, the Nahariya attack. That was horrific. Militants crossing from Lebanon, killing civilians. So the timing suggests a link. The FLLF was a response.
That seems to be the implication, yes.
Yeah.
The source also mentions the FLLF's supposed ideology, anti-Palestinian, Lebanese nationalist,
Okay.
and supposedly aligned with Israel, very much against the PLO, which was a major force in Lebanon then.
It's interesting how those two things, Lebanese nationalism and anti-Palestinian feeling, could, be mixed together and used in that environment.
Definitely. And you have to remember the backdrop. The Lebanese Civil War.
Right.
Total chaos.
A massive, incredibly complex conflict. So we're looking at one piece of a really fractured puzzle.
Exactly. That kind of environment, that Civil War context, creates space for groups like the FLF to operate, maybe with outside help, maybe not.
Yeah.
The source says they first really emerged publicly in July 1981.
And the Wikipedia page notes that this was right around the time Israel was bombing PLO centers from the air. Coincidence? Or, deliberate timing, signaling something. It raises questions.
It certainly does. What came next was apparently a wave of car bombings. It peaked around September 81, carried on until February 82.
And targeting specific areas.
Yes, specifically Muslim quarters. Cities like Sidon, Tripoli, Cheka, West Beirut.
That's a pretty widespread for a small underground group. Suggests some capability.
It does. And the source highlights one particularly awful attack, West Beirut, October 1st, 1981.
What happened there?
Well, it involved car bombs, but also a command-detonated explosive at a Pax cinema.
Oh, wow.
And the FLLF apparently called a French news agency to claim responsibility for that one.
Taking credit while the alleged backers stay hidden, the level of detail here is pretty striking, even breaking down specific incidents like September 17th, 81 in Sidon.
Yes, that was a very deadly one. A car bomb, about 300 kilograms of TNT, apparently.
Huge amount.
Exploded outside the HQ of the Joint Forces. That's usually the term for the Palestinian and allied Lebanese militant groups.
Okay.
And it happened right before they were supposed to have a meeting. Killed over 20 people, mostly civilians, wounded nearly 100.
The timing again. Right before a meeting, but hits mostly civilians. Troubling. And wasn't there another one around the same day? In Cheka?
Yes, at a cement factory, apparently frequented by people with pro-Palestinian or pro-Syrian views. The casualty count there is a bit fuzzier, maybe 4 to 10 killed.
Then there's one in Beirut, Hay al-Salam, a Shiite refugee area.
Right, and that one's grim because the police apparently thought the bomb might have gone off early.
An accident.
Or just chaos.
Hard to say. Highlights the unpredictable nature of it all. Then October 2nd, Fakani area of Beirut. That one was massive.
What was the target?
PLO offices, where Abu Jihad, a major PLO figure, worked. Over 100 pounds of explosives. Reports say at least 50 killed, over 250 wounded. Just devastating. It paints this picture of just constant fear, instability. And it wasn't only Palestinians targeted, right? The source mentions Syrian troops too.
Correct. These were Syrian troops, part of the Arab Deterrent Force, the peacekeeping mission in Lebanon at the time.
So complex.
Yeah, attacks against them happened that same month. Just shows all the different players tangled up in Lebanon then.
Okay, but then things go quiet. The source says the FLLF operations suddenly stopped right before the Israeli invasion in June '82.
Yes, that timing is, well, it's very suggestive, isn't it?
It really is. Like maybe their job was done or needed to pause for the main event.
UV. But they didn't disappear entirely. The source says they came back in 1983, another series of major car bombings.
And these sound brutal too. Jatara in the Bekaa Valley. PLO HQ targeted, 40 dead.
Then West Beirut, the Palestine Research Center, more killed and wounded, including Sabri Jiri's wife. These were significant attacks.
Definitely not minor incidents.
Yeah.
And Baalbek, Syrian-controlled area hit hard.
Yeah, about 30 killed there, nearly 40 injured. And the last big one mentioned is December '83, Beirut's Chia Quarter.
12 killed, over 80 wounded. Just awful numbers. And after that, the FLLF basically vanishes. Though maybe active till mid-'84.
Yeah, that's what the source suggests. A short but incredibly violent period on the record.
But it wasn't just these big bombings, was it? The source talks about something else, something really sensitive, the attempted assassination of the U.S. ambassador, John Gunther Dean.
Ah, yes. This is really fascinating and, very controversial part of the FLLF story.
What's the context there?
Well, the U.S., under President Ford and then continued by Ambassador Dean, had authorized contacts with the PLO. This apparently worried Israel.
Because of that 1975 agreement they had with the U.S.?
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
It seemed to clash with that agreement, which limited U.S. dealings with the PLO. So the U.S. is talking to the PLO. Israel's reportedly not happy.
Sets the stage for a motive, potentially.
According to the source, the claim is that Mossad wanted to, quote, cut the channel between the U.S. and PLO. The alleged first move was killing Abu Hassan Salameh, a key PLO contact for the Americans. Then came the attempt on Ambassador Dean.
And the attack itself sounds terrifying. His motorcade hit with gunfire, anti-tank grenades, the first car destroyed.
Yeah, it sounds incredibly violent and determined. His family was in that first car.
But they survived.
Miraculously, yes. Dean and his family escaped. Then Lebanese intelligence, under Johnny Abdo, investigated. And they reportedly traced the weapons.
And where did that lead?
Supposedly, U.S.-made weapons shipped to Israel back in '74.
Wow.
And this info was apparently passed to Washington. Now, the FLLF claimed responsibility for the attack attempt.
But Dean didn't buy it.
No, Dean himself apparently believed Israel was behind it. And the source adds that later, Israeli intelligence sources reportedly acknowledged Israel's alleged role in setting up and arming the FLLF. That's quite an admission, if true.
It really is. The source says the U.S. ambassador to Israel at the time, Samuel Lewis, even raised it with the Israeli government.
But it's crucial to add the source also includes the counter-narrative.
Which is?
That for some, this accusation is unproven. And the whole idea of Israel targeting a U.S. ambassador is just unconceivable, as the source puts it.
So starkly different views on the same alleged event.
Exactly. Dean's own quote calls it one of the more unsavory episodes in our Middle Eastern history. Really underscores the gravity, proof or no proof accepted by all sides.
It just shows the layers, doesn't it? The hidden agendas possibly at play. Okay, so moving on, the source talks about the pattern of FLLF attacks, connecting them to maybe broader strategies.
Yeah, Lee O'Brien, writing from Merritt, pointed something out. She noticed that the locations of these FLLF car bombings overlapped significantly with areas Israel hit hard in the '82 invasion.
Like where?
Places like Sidon, Uzai, Shia, Hay al-Salam, that Shiite area again, Barbier, Roche, Arab University. Areas bombed by FLLF, then targeted by the IDF invasion.
So O'Brien's thinking wasn't just random terror, but maybe preparation, softening up the ground.
That's the suggestion. Using a proxy to cause chaos, weaken opposition in zones you plan to enter militarily later. It's a chilling idea.
It's the softening up tactic O'Brien mentioned. And the source says FLLF claims went back even further to 77 more random attacks.
Yes, and even back then, the source notes, the common assumption was that FLLF was just a cover.
For who?
for the Phalangists, maybe parts of the Lebanese army,
Yeah.
and Israeli intelligence. So the idea of FLLF being a front wasn't totally new when the big bombing campaign started.
Which brings us to how Israel's alleged role supposedly came out. This part sounds like something from a spy novel.
It kind of does.
Yeah.
Arafat apparently suspected Israel was behind the 81 bombings early on, but the source says the truth, or this version of it, emerged from an anonymous complaint.
From inside.
Apparently. An officer who'd worked with Mir Dagan was deeply troubled by it all and, well, blew the whistle, so to speak.
Takes courage, if that accounts right. What happened in Israel then?
Well, the source says when rumors started swirling, though the military censor tried to squash them, prime ministers began ordered an investigation.
Okay.
And that investigation reportedly confirmed the core of the complaint.
Which was?
Essentially that Eitan, Ben-Gal, Shlomo Ilya, and Dagan had hidden Israel's role in the FLLF operations from the wider government. A secret operation, basically.
Kept secret even from parts of their own government. Wow. The source reiterates the FLLF setup was allegedly post-Nahariya attack in '79. Who were the operatives doing the actual work?
The source indicates Maronite Christians, Shiites, and Druze individuals were recruited. And Mir Dagan allegedly ran these operations against the PLO, keeping the broader IDF, defense ministry, government, even other agencies out of the loop.
Except a few.
Right. David Agmon, head of Northern Command then, was apparently one of the few briefed.
And the whole point, allegedly, was chaos. Undermining Palestinians and Syrians in Lebanon without leaving Israeli fingerprints.
Create constant fear, constant insecurity. That seems to be the alleged strategic aim.
Disturbing.
Yeah. The source touches on Dagan's reputation. Rumors about a secret unit stirring up trouble to justify an invasion. Dagan denied it. But Ben-Gal later apparently gave details to Ronan Bergman, naming Dagan as key, though both denied wanting to hit civilians.
The logistics must have been complex. Where did the bombs even come from?
Bergman claims they used IDF war spoils.
Right.
Leftover explosives from other conflicts, supposedly untraceable back to Israel.
And how did they get them into Lebanon?
Apparently hidden in oil cans or tins made at a metal shop on Ben-Gal's own kibbutz, then smuggled across the border using, well, various means, motorcycles, bikes, even donkeys, reportedly.
That detail about the oil cans from the kibbutz, it's almost surreal. If true, it taints a picture of a really deep hidden operation.
It really does.
Okay, so let's try to wrap this up. After diving into this single Wikipedia page on the FLLF, what are the main takeaways?
Well, the core claims are pretty huge, aren't they? The FLLF as an alleged proxy for Israeli intelligence for several years.
Right.
Running these violent campaigns, mostly car bombings, hitting Palestinian, Syrian targets, but also civilians. And then there's that incredibly controversial alleged link to the attempted assassination of a U.S. ambassador.
It's definitely an eye-opener how a group most of us have never heard of could be tied, allegedly, to such major events and players. It really shifts your perspective on that period.
Mm-hmm. Makes you realize that what seems straightforward on the surface often isn't. There can be these really deep, complex roots we don't see.
Absolutely.
Which maybe leaves you with something to think about.
Yeah.
What does this account, even just as one perspective from one source, tell us about proxy wars?
Oh.
About covert actions and their long-term effects?
Yeah.
And maybe consider whose version of history usually gets told, and what might still be hidden under the surface of events we think are all settled.